Hey guys, welcome to our review of The Last of Us on HBO, episode 8, When We Are in Need. And this is episode 8 of 9. So this is the penultimate episode. There's only one more left next week. This particular episode covers the sort of story of David and this group when Ellie is at her most vulnerable. Joel is really hurt. And Ellie is stepping up, trying to help Joel, and then she runs into this group. And so in the game, this was an fucking awesome storyline and moment, and really fucking harrowing, creepy about how shitty some people can be. Really, sort of earning your trust, and then kind of showing that in many ways the humans are just as bad as fucking bloaters and runners.
Sometimes
What are
worse.
those?
Yeah. So I can already tell where Alex is coming from this angle. And I agree with him. So let's jump into this. I'm gonna go straight to Alex this time. Alex, what did you think of When We Were in Need?
I think this episode is excellent. I think that on its own, in a vacuum, trying to ignore everything else outside, like the tension was super high. I really like the way that they portrayed David. There's a couple things that I think the game did a little bit better, but I mean, this was good, really good stuff. That being said, this is episode 8 of 9, and bias is impossible to ignore, and my own personal bias of the game, like the knowledge of the game and context sneaking in. And like, it's just, I get more and more disappointed every single week. I knew I was going to be disappointed with the length of this episode and the fact that they missed out on really great opportunities to introduce some zombies, generate some trust between Ellie and David that was really missing here. There's a ton of stuff here.
That's a huge critical part.
It's a huge part. And so this episode on its own, when you try to put the blinders on, absolutely amazing. But when you think about it in the greater context of a TV show, which we're getting to the point where we're going to have to, there's a lot to be disappointed about here. The length, this should have been easily 2 episodes.
2 episodes.
Needed to be 2 episodes.
We saw it coming, and here we are, and we were right.
Yeah. And so it's like, for the score portion, if I'm giving it a score based on in a vacuum like we're required to,
Yes.
the score is going to be really high because this episode was excellent. But this is going to be one that when we talk about the series as a whole, I'm going to fucking shit on it because you fucked it up. The strategic planning out of the season and saying, the DLC gets its own fucking episode. Kathleen gets her own fucking episode, and this only gets 1 episode. Like, no, that they do.
got 2.
Yeah, well, yeah, absolutely. So it's like this. There's a lot of problem. The more I think about this episode, the more it makes me mad that they didn't have more episodes in the season.
I agree. And I think the series is getting some criticism, and then defenders are sort of insulating themselves as, it's not the game, go play the game, and stop comparing it to the game. It's like, yeah, but the game does exist, and so we have every right as reviewers to compare a piece of media that is adapted from something to the original. But notice that we're not even talking about, is it better than the video game? Is it worse than the video game? We're just simply talking about, does the story have time to breathe? And does Joel and Ellie's relationship, by now we are in the second to last episode. Let's say that this series didn't do so well and it only got 1 season. You have to kind of review it on that. Did the relationship have time to breathe? I almost feel some days like the development between Bill and Frank had more time to develop, and I actually felt that progression of the relationship more than I have of the central characters of the series. Now, it's close. It's not quite that bad, but but the fact that this is a TV show, the fact that it's on HBO, the fact that you can put multiple hours more into it than, say, a video game, is when you look at the video game, the combat section's very, very large. The cutscenes, relatively small, so they have to kind of pack in the story into small bits. When you're dealing with a TV show, you don't need to do that. And they haven't been doing that, honestly. If anything has been lacking in the TV show, it is the combat sections. It is the amount of infected. It is the sense that this world doesn't feel quite as dangerous as it did in the video game, because at any moment an infected is going to show up here. Right now, I feel like, nah, infected are fine. Everybody
gotta deal
knows
with
where the
people.
hell they're
That's it,
at, and they see them come from miles away, and they're fine.
Yeah.
You know, but so it's 100% to say, hey, this episode was good. The performance is good. The story interesting and engaging. However, we are seeing pacing issues, and then when you have it feels rushed.
Yes.
Pacing issues,
Yep.
it feels rushed. And then basically, when you do consider the game, which is where we come from, we're gamers, I think in certain aspects, the game did do it better. But for mass audiences who aren't familiar with the story, they may not notice some of the things that we're noticing. But even then, I still think they're like, this is going pretty fast. Because I'll notice it's like, oh man, I can't wait, for this. It's like, that'll probably be in episode 10. I'm like, there's no episode 10. I have to remind people. It's like, no, the next episode is the last episode. And they're like, what? Yeah. So, and there's a big thing. There's still things that we have to cover, and you only got one episode left.
Yeah.
So that's mainly our my criticism as well. What about you, Joe?
I love this episode. It was great, but again, you feel the pacing. It's going super fast. I still love the way they portrayed the brutality in this episode too. I loved it, and it was like pretty much spot on from the game, which was
there's some fucking
it was
gross ass scenes. Remember that fucking like all the meat that's like hanging? I was like, oh shit. That's
it's still there. It's
kinda
pretty
brutal.
badass, but again, it's like super fast, and we only have one more episode
Right,
left.
it is fast.
So I was watching with Jacob, and I told him, I was like, well, there's only one more episode. He's like, what do you mean there's only one more
See,
episode?
I told you,
There's
people
still
that,
so
that
much to
haven't
do
played
in the game.
Yeah.
He was disappointed about that. I was like, how are they gonna fit all that? And it's like,
Oh, Jacob
that's
has played it, yeah.
exactly what we're trying to figure out. Like, are the emotions at the end still gonna be as impactful?
Yeah.
Because they're gonna have to rush through the last episode.
It makes you wonder why. It makes me question why. Because the series has to maybe, like, again, we go back. Is it because they didn't think it would do as well as it did? And if they had a chance, like I want to ask Neil Druckmann, I want to ask Craig, his co-writer, if they had a chance to do it again and HBO would give you the budget for it, would you make it longer if you had a chance to redo
Yeah.
it? I guarantee you the answer is yes, unless they're going to be like pure fucking hubris and they're like, no, this is exactly the length that it needed to be. And it's like, no, you know that ain't true. Yeah. But otherwise, good performances. What did you think about this David? The acting and the actor and who they cast for David. Did you think that he
I thought
came off?
he's still kind of
well.
Yeah, he did like. He,
So they
he
had-
was kind of convincing. It's like maybe this guy will help me, but then you do see his darker tendencies and his
Yeah.
he's creepy, and so
I think
it played it pretty well.
I think it was a little. I think the video game David, I buy a little bit more. He's a little more charismatic, and certain things that they do in the plot where, number one, he's not some religious, like cult leader. Though trivia time. In the game file, somebody discovered there was like 3,000 lines that were unused from the games that were the lines in the game that you can still get in the game. But were never said in the game, and a lot of that sort of religious stuff was in there, but they cut it all out. And I think it's, for the game purposes, I think it was good that they cut it out. But they put it back here because they're like, hey, it was in our original design. We have more time. Let's throw it back in. I think it kind of undercuts his character just a bit. Also, the biggest thing for me, though, was because a lot of this is straight out of the video game. The cutscenes, the way they meet, the way, Ellie is like very hostile at first and very suspicious of the person and how he slowly earns her trust. But in this, he earns her trust like this. And they're sitting down, and while she's like still mad at him, he says like one thing, and then all of a sudden she's smiling and stuff. It's like, nah, man, I don't know about all this. And what the video game did that's different from this is there was an infected attack during this sequence where, she and David are flung into action together, and they save each other's life. In fact, David actually has a hidden gun this whole time.
That makes David dangerous, and that's one of the things that I didn't like about this portrayal is David doesn't seem truly dangerous. She's got a gun on him in the game, and he's just like, I'll give him my gun, no problem. But he's armed the whole time because he's in control, and he knows. And then when she figures out that he was armed the whole time, at any point could have just done whatever he want. That man is dangerous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this,
But it helps also with her maybe trusting him a little bit, lets her guard a little down because he's like, well, he could have killed me at any time.
Yeah.
And then he's kind of chummy with her, good job, hits her on the shoulder like because they took care of all these infected together. And when he asks her, it's easier to trust him. But here, it's like this guy, at least the way he's depicted and the interactions he had with her, like I didn't buy it. So that's what I'm saying. I didn't really buy the actors like him gaining her trust somewhat. In this one, he never really does it. So I don't know. That's just my opinion on it.
What about did you like Troy Baker?
you can't criticize Troy Baker.
That's fine.
Yeah, don't make fun of him.
That
Don't-
was super fun. So
I
Troy
was like,
plays
"Hey."
the second guy that he brings with him, his second in command, which is also in the video game.
Attacked.
Yeah,
right?
Troy gets a glorious death. Big old fucking meat cleaver in the fucking neck by Ellie herself. So that was cool. I liked it. In fact, I almost thought his character was a little more interesting than David's because he's more conflicted. He's always like trying to question this, or he's like more. It's like, why isn't he the leader? I don't understand why this David character's the leader, but okay.
Yeah, so like
I
I
don't
don't
like looks at people and they're all like, okay, I have guns and I have everything. Well, no, you're in charge.
Well, they know what psycho piece of shit he is, and like, even the characters in the game have referenced like, oh, she's his new toy. Like they know who David is, like the real the inner circle people, and so you know, like Troy almost killing Ellie, like it's almost like a mercy type thing. It's like you do not want to be his new toy, his pet.
What did you think of the new scenes that they added with those people? This religious stuff where, he goes back to his group, explains how they found the person that may have killed, this one girl's father. What'd you think of? And then he goes over there and fucking smacks her because she's like, kill him.
I thought it was fun. Just add for people who haven't played the game, just add more to his character. It's like, all right, this guy does have a dark side, so I guess they're just trying to depict that.
Were you thinking, I was thinking, it's like, is this how they're going to introduce Abby? Because, when he said, as soon as, Joel killed this girl's father, I'm like, oh, shit, are they going to change things around?
I didn't think that.
No, because then I was listening for the names. I heard the name of the father, and that's not Abby's father's name. And then I heard the name of the girl, and that's not Abby's name, clearly. So unless they were going to completely change Abby's character, which I do not think they'll do, because that's the thing that they don't want to do, because then they think that they're giving other people power, like pieces of shit power, who hate Abby for disgusting reasons, rather than just, the forced injection into the story and poorly handled character and shitting on Joel and all this other stuff. So yeah, I was kind of paying attention to that part to see what was going on there. But okay.
Yeah, I didn't mind it. I thought it was fine.
Now, what about as far as the scene? So one of the scenes they got amazingly well, is as good as a video game, if not better, is when Joel recovers and he is interrogating them two motherfuckers. That shit was good. Fucking stabs him in the thing, and he says this thing that I'm like, I can't get it out of my head. I'm gonna pop your kneecap off with the fucking knife embedded. I was like, oh, I can't stop thinking about that. I would have told him anything. And it's so well done, so well acted. Pedro's killing it as Joel, and I love even the second guy was, oh my god, I'm not telling you shit. He was killing. It's like,
I
believed him.
He told me what I did.
so fuck, man. And so that's supposed to get you hyped up. It's supposed to get you hyped up. Joel's coming to save Ellie. And that's the subversion of expectations that the video game did, is like, okay, you're hoping that maybe, you take control of the sequence, and now you're Joel and you're trying to get there, and you want Joel to save the day, but ultimately it's Ellie who kind of triumphs on her own in a harrowing scene, in a crazy scene, which really works in a video game, but on screen, when you think about it, it has problems. Like, for example, so David eventually, David's being creepy with her. He's got her in fucking prison. He's like trying to be with her, right? He's attracted to her. He wants her to be his partner, just gross shit like this. And she's tries to earn his trust just like in the video game, and like touches his hand and then tries to reach for the keys unsuccessfully, which prompts him to like pretty much knock her out through the cage, and then says like, all right, well, I gave you a chance. And then that famous line is like, what'd you say? In pieces. So he's like, basically, I'm gonna chop you up or whatever. It's like, you better listen to me, better do what I say, or and let me fucking do the gross things that I want to do, or I'm gonna fucking eat you, or let my people eat you. And so she has to escape, and the way she does it, they get her out of there. They're gonna chop her up in pieces. The way she does it is she has an infected. She tells them that she's infected, which gives them a moment's pause, and then she's able to escape. But the point I'm making was, once she escapes into the next section, that kind of scene that's very clear in my mind from the video game, because you get to play it, you're like ducking.
The restaurant thing.
Yeah, the
Plates, dodging the plates.
It's like, it's creepy, and you don't want to. I hear you. I know where you're going. It's like, ugh. It's like, it really puts you in the shoes of a little girl being fucking hunted down by a gross pedophile, disgusting
Cannibal
monster. He's even scarier than clickers, if you're thinking in real life, and it's like, this shit is happening right now. So that was done so well. But here in the television show, it's done as well. Eventually, Ellie
as well as time allows.
As well as time allows. It is, when I go back and think about it, you're just gonna leave the fire. You look at the fire, and now you're just gonna you're gonna have sex with her. You're gonna rape her while the building's on fire. Aren't you gonna burn up and die? Like, I don't.
None of the townsfolk notices their meeting hall / chow hall are burning down. Like, there's a lot of things
There's
that they just didn't have time
afterwards that just that you start to question it a little bit. But the scenes themselves, they're still just as effective as they need to be, and that's why we like the performances. Bella Ramsey just like fucking as Ellie, just going ham with just like stabbing him multiple times. Now, as a video game player, because I can give you this extra context, I do like the video game version better.
Much better.
And that's, yes. And that's because why, Alex?
Well, I mean, so
I think we agree.
There's an awkward scene where she's in the show, she stops stabbing him and she walks out into the cold snow, and he hugs her and he calls her baby girl, which is a big revelation type thing. In the game, he walks in and he sees, she's turned him into tomato paste. Like, she's stabbing mush, and there is no David left. And then he stops her from going to that next level where he's trying to protect her from this world. And that's when he hugs her, he calms her down, he calls her baby girl. And I think it had more impact there when he's trying to stop her from doing from going beyond.
Yeah.
And this one, she's walking in the snow, and it's just, it's good, but it's just not. The problem is we have
like
context.
the moment where Joel sees, that Ellie going off on her, and then Ellie's like, he tried to, and then he's like, don't, I have you now, baby girl. And so that is way more effective than what they presented there. But if you haven't watched it still works in the TV show, but if you've played the game or you've seen the game, I think it was done a little bit better right there in that character beat. But yeah, I guess I jumped into the episode breakdown when I didn't mean to. Let's go final verdicts, and then we'll finish up the episode breakdown.
I'm gonna go with just this episode, obviously, like we do. 8. I enjoyed it. I liked it. Was a little bit too fast. The connection between David and Ellie happened too quick.
Yeah.
Because we already seen what happens in the other one. The brutality was fucking amazing. Joel interrogating, beating up everyone. Ellie slicing, and just like in the game. So it was a good episode. 8, but I'm worried. next episode. I'm
Uh,
worried.
I'm going to go with a 9. I think that on its own, trying to ignore all of the other things, and you really have to because it's like I'm trying to ignore all the things that I know that they did better in the game. And like on its own, I think this episode was really good. I think that, Bella did an amazing job in all of her scenes. David was a really cool villain. It's an interesting kind of nuanced villain. Joel had a bunch of really, really great scenes. But I'm getting to the point where I'm so tired of making excuses for the show, saying, but for the time they had allowed, and that's something that I'm constantly like repeating to myself. It's like this is the best they could do in the time that they set themselves. It's like, well, the time problems that they have are their own fucking fault because they injected a bunch of shit that we didn't necessarily need, and they chose to do that. So I think that on its own, this is a really great episode. But when we do the whole season, I'm probably going to tear up this episode a lot.
That's how we do. We do the individual episode rankings, and then we do an overall. And that's where the first time you might actually see a bigger discrepancy. So I'm also going with an 8 out of 10. I was actually going between a 7 and an 8. So I really liked last episode, that self-contained. People were like, Joe, you're crazy. And then it's like, hey, man, I thought that was really effective. I didn't have near as many problems with that depiction and recreating that as I do here. I think this David is a little weaker than the David in the video game. And this guy's performance, while solid, is not, I wasn't convincing to me. I think adding that religious stuff, it was a good idea to take that out of the video game. I didn't like it too much, though it makes total sense in a post-apocalyptic as one way of a guy gaining power, right? But I don't know. It wasn't as effective for me. And then whereas the video game, it's implied that this takes place over multiple days and there's more time. Here, I think it's all shown like as the same day, or it's like it just feels like Joel goes from being completely fucked up to now I'm murdering 17 guys, okay, 3 or 4 guys, and I'm back to normal. And it's like, wait, what?
Yeah, you were like struggling just to breathe 2 seconds ago.
Right, struggling to breathe, and now he's like fucking breaking people's neck. It's like fucking commando.
Adrenaline. It's like, that's not how that works.
Penicillin.
Injected right into your liver. It's like, I don't know if you're
fucking injecting steroids and fucking super serum.
It's like, do you take the whole thing? He's like, fucking just do it all.
I don't know.
It's like, oh, God.
And so you factor those two elements in. You factor in that I think the video game had more poignant and impactful and harder hitting moments, though it was done well here. And then finally factor in the pacing issues in just this episode. I'm not even talking about the overall. I think it could go between a 7 or an 8. So, but I'm going to give it the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to go ahead and go with an 8 out of 10. I thought it was well done, well acted. Basically, the performances from Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey really hold this one up. And really memorable fucking lines that they both get spoken really well. I mean, ripped straight from the video game. Ellie. And he's like, what? Because she didn't want to tell him his name at first. She's like, Ellie. Tell your people that it's Ellie, that little girl broke your fucking finger. It was good. It was a little more muted in the video game, I think, but just excellent. Still comes off good. And then, of course, Joel telling the second guy is like, no, I believed. I believed him. I don't care if you tell me where it is. But very smart that he's like, I'm going to get 2 guys, and then you're going to point to where it is. And because the first guy can lie. He's like, and if these points don't match, you're both dead. Genius. Joel is crazy. Anyways, so let's jump back into the episode breakdown. So, we covered most of it, but what can we say about it?
Something I wanted to add is I'm watching with 2 people who have never played the game, and they're also really liking it. And we talk about afterwards like some of the big changes that have been made, and kind of explaining to them what's happened. They're like, well, I really like this. And it's like, oh, this is how it happened here. They're like, oh, that would have been better. And one thing that they constantly have the impression of is that the infection is solved for the most part in the country. That's what they think is happening in here. Other than Kansas City in this TV show, there hasn't been a ton of infected. And they're like, oh, it's in the West. There's just not very many because the ones in Wyoming turn out to be alive.
Not cured. You just mean that it's
It's not a problem in everyday
contained,
life.
kind of,
copacetic, or what do you
something.
call it? It's we have achieved equilibrium or
where
something.
it's
like
not a
that.
threat to humanity very much anymore as it
Right.
would be like there's just a bunch of rabid animals all over the place. And so it's like that's not necessarily the case. And I think it's doing a disservice. And I think unfortunately what we may be getting is people being up their own ass and going, the real terror of the is the people. Human beings are the real monsters. Like
Well, that's
you can have both. You can
Yes.
have the
Yeah.
people
You can have
be
both.
And that's what the game was.
both
Yeah.
is like the human beings are actually more terrifying because they can hold you in a prison, they can chop you up in little pieces, or they're pedophiles, or these other things.
Well, the people that defend the video game would say no. It's always been the people.
Yeah.
And even more so than the infected. But the truth is, it is both.
Because I thought they were
Because
actually
the
going to.
mechanics, that's what makes you scared. That's what you fight
Tension.
infected and you fight assholes.
I thought they were actually going to have a clicker here because, like, you hear a distant
There
clicker.
was a clicker in the video
I was like,
game.
okay, so
there
this-
was an attack.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and this she
at
hears
the,
a
at the
clicker.
bottom of the bottom of the screen, it says clicking.
Yeah,
when
distant
she's
clicking.
deer hunting.
That's what I thought
Yeah.
they were going to meet up, and
Yeah.
then they were going to kind of take out that one.
No.
And the clickers don't really click in the fucking series as much as they should. Yeah, they click, but like I need to hear that sound more often. We've heard it like what, once, twice?
Once
It's like,
this
come on.
episode, yeah.
No, this episode it wasn't a clicker, but you know when that clicking noise sticks out of my mind during the David Ellie thing, where one just like fucking bursts in while they're having their conversation, and it just starts clicking, and you know it's going to attack Ellie, and then you know David manages to kill it, saving Ellie. Yeah. David saves Ellie's life, and I should have said this in the review. That
We did.
it could have been. I don't know if I let people know that.
I think you did.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, and it's almost like a fake Joel replacement. Like you know, it's like, hey, you know, we make a good team, or we can do this kind of thing, and just earning her trust. Like I'm like Joel, kind of thing. All to then later be a piece of shit and make that impact more. But yeah. So, anyways. Yeah, we pretty much covered it all. They do a lot more of the Christianity cult leader, you know, that was from unused game lines.
From a teacher to a preacher.
From a teacher to a preacher.
Which makes it's also even more scary that he was he was a teacher at a school
Yes.
and stuff, and so there's even more ickiness that goes along with it. And I like that they included that they're cannibals and things like little things like, oh, we can't bury your dad right now because the ground is hard, but they
also had code
They were
words.
eating him, and
You see
Ven-
them all
venison,
like
deer,
three
rabbit.
bodies.
These are people.
Yeah.
And that's code word. And he says, "Hey, I'm not using code words. Go get the penicillin." You know,
yeah,
it's not
and so
code.
it's all that stuff. They couldn't do it. They can't waste the frozen dad. You don't waste a popsicle. So
In fact, that girl was probably eating her father.
yeah,
Yeah.
the Cartman move right there.
You can have more.
That's
Sure,
fucking
you can.
Mhm.
I was like,
Crazy.
oh, God.
It says
And he
familiar.
drags in the deer just to
Oh,
show the
he's
people
sick.
that we have deer. You know, even though we didn't have deer. Ellie killed this, not I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's see. Like I said, the relationship growth is a little too fast compared
Yeah.
to the game. But the torture scene was done well. The prison scene done well. Things are done well because like they're lifting it, you know, specifically from the game that did it well. And these are scenes that work, and so that when they recreate them and when they're sticking to the source material, it's working. She trusts him pretty easy, going from hostile to smile over nothing, not having an infected attack. It takes away from it a bit. Yeah. No, I think we've covered everything. I will say that there are a few things here that I think they're setting up the themes of The Last of Us 2. This is one thing that the video game didn't do because I don't know if they had the story ready for part two, but it feels at certain times that they're retroactively setting up what they're going to do in part two, setting up the anger of Ellie and the violence and dangerousness of her and how perhaps Joel is actually bad for Ellie and they're bad together and this isn't this isn't a story of a father daughter meeting and trying to find some piece of happiness or coping in this apocalypse world, but that Joel was never good for her and this and that, and I don't know, just like the Last of Us Part Two themes I did not like, and so there's things in The Last of Us 2 that I'm worried about that they're setting up here, and that is that they tell her you have a violent heart. And they never said that in the video game. What they're doing is they're setting up her character growth in part two and the reason why she makes some decisions that she makes. But I think that part of our problem with part two is that it kind of craps on Joel and making kind of the whole thing somewhat feel a little pointless. And I started to see some of that here, that they're bad for each other, blah, blah, blah. Shut the fuck up. Go depress somebody else. Because I wonder if people went on the internet and looked up, like, does Joel die? Because, like, he he got stabbed. So they're, like, typing there, and they were like, oh. And they got spoiled on something completely different.
Yeah.
So
I was trying to use this kind of too for myself as a filler. It's like, all right, well, this is going to be kind of what season 2 is going to be like, just Ellie. It's like,
Right.
I already missed Pedro Pascal.
Yeah.
I'm not ready to let go
it's
yet.
gonna be fucking hard, dude.
So it's like,
I think
can't
a lot
she
of
just carry it by herself?
can she? I don't know. I don't think so. Sorry.
That's what I was feeling.
I think that she herself could, if the thing we were swapping to wasn't something that I don't know if I'm gonna like. Like if the other, we talk about a lot of things. If there's two storylines, I think Bella could carry a show. The issue is, like, I don't think that I'm not gonna buy her stuff. Is I'm gonna buy the other things that we're constantly swapping to in season 2 that I just may not like.
Right. Yeah, that's what I factored all that into there because, I especially think mass audiences. Nope, not gonna work for them. So even the ending of The Last of Us Part 1 was controversial. It's supposed to be controversial. It's supposed to be kind of ending in a bit unsatisfying way where it's like set up for the future. So I'm curious how mass audiences are going to react to that ending. Definitely curious how they're going to react to a moment that happens in part 2. And then curious how HBO goes forward if there's going to be a season 3. Well, there actually already is. So remember, they announced that they're thinking about doing part 2, Last of Us Part 2, and splitting it into 2 seasons. So that just confirms what we all suspected, that if they had a chance to go back and do it again, they would do more episodes for the first one. Because honestly, there's way better and more good material in the first game than there is in the second. And so if they're already trying to drag out the second, to me, that feels business. That feels business decision. That feels this. Even though we're begging for it, right? Because we're asking for this season to be extended, but maybe the season order that they put in, often that'll happen. It's like, do I want my show to get fucking made? Well, then I have to work with what I have to work with. They only approved 9 episodes. We have to do this. So it's just a limitation, but it's still worth talking about. So, solid episode. Again, we have been concerned about pacing, and do we think that 1 episode left is enough to do this? My prediction is that it's going to be filmed. It's basically like this. It's going to be filmed well, acted well, but again, it's going to feel somewhat hollow and not quite as impactful as it could have been. What do you guys think?
No, I agree.
Predictions for the
there's
last
so much
episode.
you got to do, and like I said, I'm worried the impact's not going to be there. It's going to kind of ring hollow. It's like, well, it should have. It was done better, and knowing what we know, kind of has it tainted.
Yeah, I think this episode was the one that I think it definitely needed to. I could have predicted this one needed to, and the final one can fit in a last episode. I'm hoping that there's some important things that are infected related in the final to come that I hope that we don't just brush over, and that the last.
Are there going to be any infected in the last episode?
Because there's important stuff. Like there's some big ambushes and stuff happen. Like they're supposed to happen.
Are there going to be any in the last episode?
I think there has to be. I think that they paid for the suit. They're going to use it twice.
Okay.
Yeah,
I was about to say. I was like, I need to know. Do you think, Joe, there's going to be any infected in the last episode? Featured, an attack, everything that's going well. No, you
There
don't think-
has to be, but my mind's saying no.
because we've now been trained
your
that
body.
everything is
Well,
fine.
the body.
But my body says yes. Mine says no. Body says yes. We'll see. All right, guys. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you on the next Angry Joe Show. Bye, guys.